Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I want to show you how I clean up my watercolor artwork and how I turn it into a half drop repeat pattern, and then also how I export multiple sizes from the export persona in Affinity Designer. So we'll use both Affinity Photo to do the cleanup of the artwork and then move over to Affinity Designer to create the template for the half drop repeat, and then also create the pattern. The first thing I want to show you is how to set up your workspace. This is the way that I like it. I like to have my assets readily available. If you don't have your assets available, head over to Windows and select assets, and then you can place it whatever feels best for you. I like to have my library of macros that I use most of the time, and I like to have my macro panel also available just in case I feel like I'm repeating a step too much, and then I can go ahead just record a macro and record those actions and make sure that I have it ready for the next time and I don't have to repeat the same steps again and again. So those three I like to have available, and then I like to have swatches, colors. Here the histogram I don't usually use it. We're still in Affinity Photo, but I like this kind of layout. Then I like my layers, and I like having the brushes here as well. So I use the brushes a lot of the time. And then down here I like to have transform to make sure that if I need to nudge things just a pixel or two, I can do it from here as well. And then I like to have the history available, because that way I can go back and delete several steps with one click only without having to go Control Z several times. So now that I have my layout and the workspace the way that I like it, I can then go ahead and head over to Window and then head over to Studio, and then you can add a preset, and then you can call it your 2025 My Workspace. That's how I ended up calling it, but just presets. Add your name, test preset of workspace, and then hit OK. And then the next time, if you lose any of your tabs or any of these areas that you like to have available, or any of these tools you like to have available, then just head over to Window, go to Studio and click on it, and you'll have your workspace back and ready to go. So that's the first thing. Then the next thing I like to do to clean up my artwork is basically I like to keep an original scan just to make sure if I need it later on, I have it available. So the first thing is to duplicate that layer. I am in a PC, so I just hit Control J and that duplicates the layer. And then I click on the first layer and add a pixel layer in between those two layers, and I just add a dark color, black or dark colors, that I can see all the lines and everything that's being removed. So I just, in that middle layer, I'm still in the middle layer, and I fill that with the flood fill tool, which looks like a little bucket. So in my layers panel I see that it's all black, so now I'm ready to keep going. The next step is I have some shadows here in this corner a little bit. The size of the paper, it's 9 by 12, and my screen in my scanner, it's a little bit smaller. I think it's 11.7. So sometimes I get that little bit of shadows. The first thing I do is I go to my adjustments and then hit levels, and here in the white level, just let's move that to around where you can start seeing that all that little bit of shadow, it's gone, it's no longer there. So I kind of like that. The other thing that I like with these flowers, they look a little bit too intense. So the gamma, I don't do this all the time, but with this one I want to do it because as you see, the gamma is also kind of lightening and making them a little bit softer, and I kind of want that look with my flowers. See, if you keep it in the one, which is what it came out with, it's still a little bit dark in some areas. It's fine, but I just want it a little bit softer, so I'm gonna move that just a little bit, and I like that. Now, usually I like what I see, but what I usually do is then I just go here and hide the black layer to make sure I can see the difference between the original and the changes that I'm making. And what they look a little bit, they're significant this time. Usually I don't make this significant change, but this time I'm updating the gamma just a little bit because I want them just softer. Okay, so once it's done and I'm happy with the levels adjustment, then I just go ahead and merge that with that top layer, and then turn my black layer again on. So the next thing I like to use, it's this flood selection tool, which looks like a magic wand. And then here at the top in the contextual menu, I like to keep it fairly small, 5%, and make sure that you hit contiguous. When you hit contiguous, everything that is touches, that it's the color that you select, it's going to be selected, but not any additional white color that may be inside the roses here or even inside the flower. So now that we have 5% contiguous and the flood selection tool, which looks like a magic wand, selected, and we click on the white, and here we have to do a little bit of adjustment just on these. Everything is looking good in terms of the selection, but here I want to soften this up just a little bit and grab a little bit more of the color so I don't have these very rough edges. So in order to do that, I go back to the freehand selection tool. And then with these, what I want to do is hit Alt. If you're in a PC, you hit Alt and it says, you see that minus sign, and that means you're going to remove that selection from the white. So what I want to do is to remove this little bit of selection here. See, it starts smoothing it out. I want to smooth out this one just a little bit as well. I want to smooth these a little bit to have I have a little bit of white there. I'm fine with this, it's not too bad. But here I think I can grab some of these so that it's not so hard. And see, it smooths the selection just enough. And the same with this one. I want to add all of these to smooth that selection. I think I can do a little bit of clean up here as well, and this area here. Okay, so I think that's it on in this. Let's see, maybe a little bit on this one as well. I can do a little bit of smoothing of this one. Let's see what else. Here there's a tiny space that I would like to keep as well, and the rest is looking good. Let's see. Everything else is looking good, so now I can go ahead and hit delete. So let's hit delete, and it will remove all the white background that is contiguous. Now I hit escape in your keyboard, and then let's keep selecting all these other white areas that we want to remove from our artwork, and then finalize the cleanup process. So then here and here, I don't want to touch the white on the inside of the flowers yet. I don't see any other places that I need to remove. Maybe some of these spaces here with this little bit of white over here could make a little bit of a difference. There's this white over here that we can remove, and what I'm doing is basically just clicking on it with the same selection, the tolerance at 5% with the flood select tool, and then just hit delete to delete those. The next step basically for me in this process is to delete some of these other white, refine some of this selection, right? So use the erase tool. So now I go head over to the erase brush tool and select in some of these areas, just erase. I have to make sure that I'm in the right layer. Yes. And make sure I don't have anything selected, and then I can just kind of smooth out some of these things, some of these areas with the eraser. or do a little bit of cleanup. Once I start doing the selection and refine the selection using the selection tool to remove all these little white areas, it'll start looking a lot better. So I'm not too worried about all these little pieces. They're going to go away once I start. We run the macro, and I'll show you also how to do it manually. So let's do that. I think for the most part it's looking good. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is to clean up all these white halos that form around of the white paper, so these little white areas. So in order to do that, I already have a macro that I like to run, and I suggest you create the macro as well. So the first thing, I'll show you how to do it once, and then we'll run it again just with the macro. In order to set up the macro, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have the move tool selected, and then just hit control and click on the actual icon thumbnail in your layer, and that it's going to select. You'll see the marching ants. It's going to select everything around it. So now hit on start recording, and then hit over select, grow and shrink. Since we selected the artwork and we want to shrink that selection, you just have to enter it's a negative value, and I'm gonna start -2 pixels, and then hit apply, and you see now the selection is inside, so everything that is kind of outside of it, it's going to be removed. Now in the next step I do is select, and here feather, and feather by 1 pixel, and apply that, and it kind of smooths out that selection a little bit. And then the next thing I do is select, go back to select, select inverse, select invert pixel selection, Control Shift I, and then now you're selecting everything that is outside. And the next thing I do is hit delete, and you'll see that it removed all that white area, and hit escape so you can remove that selection, and it removed all that white area. So that's how you get rid of those little white halos in your artwork. And I see that there's still some areas that can need a little bit of refinement, so we'll do that running the macro. So now everything is the macro is recorded, and now hit stop recording, and then the next thing you want to do is add to library, and add it to your library so you can use it later. I'm not gonna add it to the library now because I already have the trusty macro right here. I call it the different steps, right? Shrink by 2 pixels, then feather by 0.5 or 1 pixel like we did in this one, inverse the pixel selection, and then delete. So basically that's what it does. So let's run the Mac this time. So make sure you have the move tool, hit control or press control in your keyboard, and click on the thumbnail for that layer, and it makes the selection. And once the selection is done, then run the macro, and it removes another 2 pixels from your artwork. So that's how I clean my artwork. Now it's ready for me to take it to Affinity Designer to create a pattern. But for this one, what I want to do is just use the flowers, and I don't think I'm gonna need the extra leaf branches here. So what I want to do is separate that in layers. So using these again, the freehand selection tool, and make sure that you're in the right layer. Select the art that you want to keep or want to separate into a separate layer, and make sure that selection grabs everything that you want, and then you can Control X to cut and Control V to paste, and then you'll see an escape to deselect, and now you'll see that you have it in a separate layer in your layers panel, so you can hide the other layer if you have multiple items. So now I have the artwork. One thing I like to do is to kind of refine some of the art a little bit. I started doing this recently, so it's not something that I've been doing for a lot, but I kind of want to get these areas that are very white, just to give them a little bit of color so that they look more closer to the watercolor design. So to do that, what I do is I just add a new layer right on top of it, a new pixel layer, and I go over, select the brushes, the paintbrush tool, and then here I go to my brushes, and I have these watercolor brushes from Ultimate Brush Toolbox. These are Nathan Brown, and I love a lot of his brushes, but let's just skip to this one, this old worm brush. And then over here in my swatches, I select this and select the color. I select the color picker, select the color, and make sure that I have the brush that I want, and go over to my layers, make sure that I'm in the right layer. And I want to paint over just a little bit. I picked a little bit, it's too big in terms of the size, so Control X. Okay, so I just want to add a little bit of color, just in these white areas. And I started doing this recently, and I kind of like how it looks like, you know, it's not so sharp, bright white, so it gives it just a little bit of color. And then the next thing I like to do is to change this layer from normal to multiply. And yeah, that's a little bit darker, so I can come back and erase some of it. Let's see, go back to the eraser. See, it makes a very big difference. And then go back to my tools, because I don't want it to be too much. I just want just enough to hide that the sharp white. And then let's do the same thing with these purple roses, just to make sure that the color picker and pick a light purple from the flowers, and in that same layer I can go ahead and just add in there just like one line. I kind of like the way these, I started doing these just these past few weeks, and I like the way it looks. Sometimes a little bit too dark, but I like it. It's not so sharp of contrast in there. Still get a little bit of that white. And the other thing you can do, if it's too sharp of color for you, what you can do is also in this layer, go head over to opacity and maybe change it 75%. Kind of keep it 75 or even 50%. I just want so it doesn't look so bright. And then one more flower here, the same thing. Make sure I'm in the right layer, the color picker, pick one of these very light pink reddish colors, and just paint a little bit over in these red, in these very white areas, so just to get it just as super contrasting. Okay, so I like that, and that looks very good. So now it's without it, now it's with it. See, it's very faint, it's not too big of a change, but it looks, I like it. Okay, so the next thing is, let's group these two layers, the pixel layer and the background layer. Select both of them, and then Control G makes a group. And then what you want to do is keep that layer as is. I usually like to keep all my layers, but what you can do is here you can do merge visible, but in order to do that, just make sure that you have all the other layers are hidden, so it only merges this one. Or you can just right click again and rasterize, and then it just makes it in one pixel layer. So I'm going to undo that because I want to keep a version of it. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the other two layers, and then I just have the group, and then I'm going to click merge visible, and then I have the extra layer. I have my group that has the pixel and the background, both are pixel layers, and then I still have the original down here. Okay, so the next step is to head over to Affinity Designer, quickly work on the pattern. So let's head over to Affinity Designer and work on a simple pattern using this artwork. So first I want to go ahead and copy this artwork, right click and select copy. And now in Affinity Designer, what I want to do is to create half drop repeat. So the first thing is to create the pattern template. So let's do that. File, new, and here I like to use 24 inches and 24 by 24 inches and 300 dpi. I don't usually create an artboard and I don't change anything here in the color. I just have transparent background because that's what I like, and I make sure that sRGB is the one that it's selected. If you uncheck that transparent background, it's going to give you that white background. If that's what you like, you can do that too, but I prefer this transparent checkered. Okay, so hit create, and let's create the half drop repeat. In order to do that, the first thing I like to do is to create a rectangle large enough to cover all the different instances of my rectangle. So this one we're gonna call the background, and then let's go to swatches and let's give it a color. Okay, now you cannot see the full size of this bigger rectangle outside of your canvas size. In this case it's a 24 by 24. So what you want to do is you want to go to view, and then you want to go to view mode and clip to canvas. Here in clip to canvas you can see the shortcut. It's the backward slash in your keyboard. So from now on, that's what I'm going to be using, that backward slash for clip to canvas. So when you click on it, you can see the full size of that background. So the next thing is to create another rectangle that it doesn't have a fill, and it's just undo that. I need to deselect that one, and then another rectangle that doesn't have a fill. We'll remove the fill here in a minute, but it does have, remove the fill. And here in the stroke, I want to be able to see it, so I'll increase the size. Maybe, I think that's enough. And here just make sure that it's aligned in the center. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is head over to symbols and make this rectangle a symbol. So if you don't have your symbols panel or open, go head over to window and select symbols and place it whichever way makes sense for you. If you're left-handed or right-handed, once you have the symbols open, just hit create a new symbol from the current selection. And then what we want to do is to duplicate these half drop repeat. So we want to move this rectangle, create a duplicate, and then move it up halfway and down halfway, and then that's going to give us that half drop repeat. So you can do this in multiple ways. I've shown you in a different video how to do it. Just hit alt and create the different duplicates, or you can just hit enter. And since we know these are 24 inches, so on the horizontal I just want to move it 24 inches, and in the vertical I want to move it 12, and then I want to create a duplicate, right? So it creates one duplicate for me. Hit OK, then go back to the original one, hit enter again. In the horizontal I still want to move it to 24, and in the vertical I want to move it minus 12 inches. Click on duplicate, create a duplicate, hit OK. Now I have these two new, and then what I want to do, again, select both of them, hit enter. Here in the horizontal I want to move it minus 48 actually, because I need it the full length. So minus 48 inches, there you go, and hit OK. Make sure you got the duplicates, and then we need two more, just one in the top and one in the bottom. So go back to the original one, and then you can hit enter or just use the alt and drag. But here in the vertical, no movement in the horizontal, but in the vertical make sure you move it like minus 24, because we want the full length. So minus 24 moves it up, and make sure you create the duplicate, hit OK, and then one last time, enter, vertical plus 24. In the vertical, create a duplicate and hit OK. Okay, So now you have all the instances of that same symbol that we are going to use to create our half drop repeat. So one thing is, first let's make sure that we grab all these other symbols and we group them, and this group is going to be your original repeats, and here in this original one here is the actual pattern. Okay, so now we have our template, and we had already, one thing I want to do is I just want to get these up a little bit so we can see the full. Now the next thing we can do is to bring our artwork, which we already have in the copied. So then just hit edit and paste Affinity from Affinity Photo that we just cleaned up. When it comes here, it comes as a pixel layer, and if you hit in the move tool here at the top, it tells you it's 1200 dpi. Then that's the size that I scanned the artwork. So this is the size at 1200 dpi. So I still have enough dpi's that I can shrink or make it just a little bit larger. When I make it larger here, you can see that it changed the pixel to 852 dpi. So I'm always paying attention. If I move anything, I don't want to change it more than, or I don't want to have it less than 300 dpi. So I kind of like that. Now the next thing I want to do is to make this one artwork also symbol, so that any change that I make in it, it's repeated in any other instance of my artwork. So I do that. So click on the layer, go to your symbols panel and hit create. So now it's there, and then I can just make a copy, hit alt, make a copy, flip it around and create a different size. Let's now go ahead and move these two inside my pattern right above the original rectangle, and there you can see how we're already starting to build our pattern. Since I already have, let's do like one more from the original, one more copy, hit alt, drag, and I kind of want to have just a tossed simple pattern, because this is a secondary pattern for a collection that I'm working on. Okay, so I like that. I just want to now hide that original rectangle that created our symbol, so we don't need it anymore. And then there you go, we have our half drop repeat pattern that you can now export and upload to your favorite print on demand places. Remember, this is a half drop, so if the print on demand place doesn't support a half drop, then you'll have to convert it into a full drop. And there's many ways to do that. I have actually a video where I already show you how to do that, so just head over, take a look at that video. So let's make this pattern just a little bit more contrasty. So let's take this artwork here, this first original symbol, go over to the actual layer and go over to the pixel persona, head over to the freehand selection tool, and let's grab these, the two roses, the two purple roses, and let's try to do something with them to add a little bit more variety to this pattern. So I have those two, I have them selected, so I'm going to go ahead and control copy, and then control C to copy, control V to paste, and now I have it pasted. Now I can move it out of that symbol and escape to deselect, go back to my designer persona and the move tool, and now what I want to do is to place these, make these also a symbol. I usually just go ahead and make it a symbol in case I make any changes. So we can refine this a little bit, just erase. You go back, let's do that, right? Go back to the pixel persona, and using the eraser tool you can erase here all these little colors as well, and here, just to make them look a little bit different as well and look cleaned up. So now go back to my designer persona and my selection tool, and I can put one instance here. I already have it. Go ahead and make it a symbol, right? create. Now it's a symbol and it's inside my pattern. It's looking really good. And now let's see, I want to make another instance of this one, so hit Alt and make a copy, maybe over here. What I'm basically doing is flip horizontal. I have it set up in my keyboard as F5, and let's see, I can use this one maybe one more time. Actually, different size on this one, smaller, maybe it's a little bit smaller here, and this one. And now we have a very nice tool on how to create this design. Actually, I have some here that I can show you what I'm thinking. Basically, I have this one that I already cleaned up in an earlier video, and it's in my assets. It's actually a watercolor cleaned up, and I just put it here in my watercolor assets, and I can use it. When I pull it in, it's 1200 dpi, but that means I can play with it with all that. I was able to pan it a little bit, and then I was able to get it to, right now it's at 670 dpi, so I don't want to mess it up too much. So then maybe, again, you can go to view and view mode and click to canvas, and then this is actually your tile, the tile that you are going to be exporting. Right, but again, backward slash is actually to canvas, so you can see the whole thing again. And the last step is basically exporting this in different sizes. So what I do is I go to the export persona, and here in the export persona you can select the different slices. You can export as a single PNG or whatever you need, right? You can select single JPEG, high quality, it's another option, or even like up here you can select what you need. Sometimes I need a TIFF file, so I just select the TIFF file and I change the name just to make sure that you have the right name. Usually I just grab this document name, I already have it selected, so I have the document name and the slice name. It's basically what I want to put in here. Here I make sure you are 300 dpi, and that's fine. Click on, and then here I have one TIFF that I want to export, and I also want to export in another. Let's say I want a TIFF and a PNG, so add 1 times, or maybe I need the PNG at half the size. Since it's 24, I want it at 12 inches, so I say 0.5 x. It's gonna give me that. Hit enter. It's going to give me like 50% of that, and then here I can change the name again, document name, make sure I enter 300 dpi. It doesn't really matter because the document is already at 300 dpi, so it's going to export at that, but just in case. And then here you click export slices, and then you'll have your TIFF file and your PNG file exported and ready to upload into your favorite POD. I think this video was a little bit long, but hopefully you learned a few tricks, a few techniques on how to take your watercolor or any analog design or analog artwork that you have and turn it into a half drop repeat pattern in Affinity Designer. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.